The cover page of One Piece chapter 1107, I've Been Looking For You, is hilarious. Beppo's jealous of a snow leopard hanging out with Law and decides to go full Looney Tunes on it. He's about to pour hot tea in the poor thing's mouth and beat it with a bat when it wakes up. To kick off the chapter, the giant warrior pirates are here. We've got Dory and Brogy planning their landfall. They're going to have Oimo and Kashi take most of their forces and swing around the side. They'll sink whatever ships they can find. This will make sure the Navy can't just form a barricade while the giants are getting the Straw Hats. Oimo and Kashi are more than happy to take the mission on as the other giants raise their weapons in cheer. We get this massive look at the giant pirate crew walking right onto Egghead as the Marines are yelling at each other over Den Den Mushi, trying to figure out what's going on. A legendary pirate crew that's been disbanded for years just showed up out of nowhere to help a Yonko's crew. Now they're attacking the blockade ships and breaking them up with their axes. Keeping these guys contained will not be easy. Up on the Labo Stratum, someone is gasping in shock. Usopp, Nami, and Chopper are watching their allies make landfall. With binoculars, Usopp can see who took the lead. The sniper starts crying as he recognizes them. Usopp hasn't forgotten what happened on Little Garden and couldn't be more happy to see Dory and Brogy. But like most of the fandom, he is really surprised to see them here. He calls out for them, still not able to believe it. Nami's figured it out. She spotted Oimo and Kashi and immediately threw out the idea that they picked up their captains from Little Garden. Chopper echoes the other two giants' names, happy to see them too. Usopp sighs with relief. He wasn't sure that the other two giants would have reached Elbaf. Oimo and Kashi had the time skip to find their captains and get back home. When we last saw these two, they were still squabbling on Little Garden, and that was while Luffy's crew was on Fishman Island. They made it back home quickly. Punk Edison is impressed by how strong the giants are. They're giving the Marines a hard fight. He's still surprised that the Straw Hats have giant friends. He figures they decided to help out after catching wind of the attack. The Marines needed to put together a bunch of ships and men to blockade Egghead. It's no surprise that it made the newspapers. And even with Morgan spinning all of this in the world government's favor, the giants knew to trust the Straw Hats. Usopp has his head in the game. The giants aren't here to fight a war. They're here to help the Straw Hats get to safety. They need to finish their preparations and be ready to leave Egghead right now. Just then, Nami gets a Den Den Mushi call. It's from Brook and Lilith, who are still riding the Thousand Sunny over frozen clouds. They've almost gotten the Sunny to the edge of the cloud layer, but they don't have a way to stop it. Brooks decided to sip some tea, while Lilith takes over the call. She has some kind of idea that should help make the ship stop, but she needs the other Straw Hats to help. Jinbei's happy to lead them to it, bouncing over the clouds in a different direction. He has his own job to try and deal with, bringing back Zoro to the group so they can leave. The Straw Hat First Mate is still by the main lab, meeting Rob Lucci's claws with hockey-infused steel. This fight's been going on for a while now. These two are just hitting each other as hard as they can while all the events on the ground layer of Egghead play out. And both men are starting to feel worn out. Zoro admits that Lucci is tough, but he claims that he is in a hurry, so it is time to end this. Lucci's huffing and struggling to catch his breath, but hits back with the same tough talk, calling Zoro a burden to his crew. Lucci manages to grin, throwing out a bleak idea. He doesn't see the Straw Hats making it out if they're unwilling to make some sacrifices. Lucci is a utilitarian, ruthless guy who will do whatever it takes to win. So he suggests that the only way for the Straw Hats to survive is by abandoning Zoro. Zoro stands tall and points out that Rob Lucci is not the one in control of their fight. Our boy is looking just as tired though. And based on what Sanji manages to do in this chapter, I need Mosshead to show us what he is really made of here. We then head down to the Egghead coastline where one of the pacifistas just fired its laser. It blew yet another Marine ship to pieces. The Marines report that about 30 of their small to medium-sized ships have been sunk at this point. That's a pretty big loss. Their total blockade force was 100 ships, with 20 of those being massive battleships. So the Marines have already lost about half of their small ship count. That's great news for the Straw Hats. The battleships are more dangerous, but the Marines need a ton of ships to keep Egghead fully blockaded. At this point, with the Great Warrior Pirates backing them up, escape should be pretty smooth. Trying to keep the blockade intact, Vice Admiral Red King orders the smaller ships to pull back. They're going to try to use the battleships to maintain the blockade and bust their call. They have the firepower to shoot down the pacifistas. Red King looks disgusted at the order he has to give as the first battleship sends one of the giant cyborgs flying. And for an emotionless killing machine, the pacifista looks really upset as it falls to the ground. These things aren't just robots. They're partially Kuma's clones. Are all of them starting to feel emotions as part of that Buccaneer species trait? Either way, we're back to the absolute chaos of Egghead Central Square. Luffy's hanging in the air above a crowd that consists of Atlas, Kuma, Kizaru, Bonnie, a dying Vegapunk, Sanji, and Saint Saturn. And his arrival distracted everyone to the point where they are all just looking at him now. Luffy doesn't care. He just says hi to Bonnie before asking why she's crying. Bonnie's still too messed up to really explain it, just saying that she's been looking for Luffy for such a long time. Luffy doesn't get it. He's been right here with her the whole time. Bonnie, a bit frustrated, points out that she didn't know that he was Nika. Luffy still doesn't know what Nika is. And before Bonnie can explain, he asks her what was up with that weak punch she threw earlier. Bonnie rolls with that, pointing out that she was trying to use a big rubbery attack just like Luffy would. And if it's weak, Luffy can just show her how it's done. He just has to punch Saint Saturn really hard and then they can get out of here. She points out that they need some vengeance for Vegapunk. And that makes Luffy finally spot the sort of state the old man is in. Saturn's unrepentant, claiming none of these vermin have a right to live now. But there's no way Luffy will go down that easily. He's down for this plan. He starts winding up a punch, spinning his arm behind him. But before it lands, Saturn glares at him, focusing that same power that paralyzed the Straw Hats when he first arrived. That strange attack is enough to hurt Luffy, knocking his head back and drawing blood. Whatever weird magical powers Saturn is using, Gear 5 can't just cartoon it away. But this is Luffy. He's not going to stop his attack just because of one lucky hit. Yelling that Saturn is going to pay for hurting his friends, he goes for his big new attack. Gum Gum Booming Dawn Gatling. Rapid fire hockey infused giant punches from both hands. We needed this. I hope this is not the last time we get a big shot of this guy getting punched. Saturn has nothing to defend himself against this. Bonnie watches, getting some satisfaction from Luffy's attack. Even the non-moving Kuma and the fallen Vegapunk look content. Finally ending his assault, Luffy flips around, using another fist to launch Saturn through one of the half-wrecked buildings. Luffy is now directly fighting a member of the Gorosei. Saturn thought that glare would be enough to stop Luffy, and he didn't have a backup plan he could use in time. Down on the ground, Franky and Punk Atlas are ready to try and get Bonnie out of here. They've lost the vacuum rocket, but they've still got their hover boots, so they can fly away from the town square. Bonnie tries to get Vegapunk up, wanting them all to leave together. But the old man has bad news. He has enough medical experience to know that moving now would kill him. Before they can even do anything to help, they've got a new problem to deal with. Kizaru. The Admiral is back in action, floating above the battlefield and charging a laser blast. He notes that the two of them are going to die either way. But before he shoots, Kizaru closes his eyes. He really doesn't want to do this. Bonnie looks up, but before she can move, Kizaru fires. But just then, he's blocked by Sanji. Sanji and his stocks rise and move at the speed of light to intercept the blast. It's crazy enough that Kizaru can't believe it. He's just staring at Sanji with his mouth open, not sure what to say. We have never seen him look like this. This is like when Enel saw Luffy tank his electricity, or when Usopp was immune to Perona's negative hollows. Franky can't believe it either. He has no idea how Sanji pulled that off. The cook proudly proclaims that light cannot hold a candle to love. But look at those eyebrows. His Germa powers are kicking in right when he needs them. Kizaru is not buying the whole love idea, pointing out that that is not how physics works. But he has nothing better to suggest. And before he can do anything more, Atlas and Franky take off, carrying Bonnie and Kuma. They can reach the port area in the northeast on their own. They should be able to join up with the giants from there. Kizaru holds a hand to his head. His situation has gone from bad to worse. Now, the only targets he has left to try and take down to redeem himself are Luffy, Sanji, and the mostly dead Vegapunk. Luffy laughs at the idea of the Admiral pulling that off. Sanji just takes a second to smoke, claiming that Kizaru better start working on his apology letter for screwing this up. Which was such a great line, oh my goodness. Sanji fans just got a big W, but let's try and make sense of all this. I'm under the impression that his father Judge modified Sanji and his siblings to have anti-Vegapunk features. Vegapunk replicated Kizaru's lasers ages ago. It's why Franky was able to replicate the early designs when he was in the Doctor's hometown. Vegapunk has applied it to a bunch of his creations by now. And being a Vegapunk hater, these sorts of countermeasures were a given. I guess it's time for Kizaru to switch it up with some hockey. Meanwhile, Saturn is still lying in the rubble. But before he can get up, A woman in high heels steps over to his side. The new arrival sounds amused at this, recognizing this demonic spider as one of the Gorosei, lying down in the dirt. Then we get a close-up of her ugly mug like she forgot to flip the camera. Katarina Devon outright laughs at the sight of Saint Saturn as he gets up, calling his power delicious. The idea of an elder showing up away from the Holy Land to grace the common people is unprecedented. But this has made their job far, far easier. Devon puts her hand on one of Saturn's spider legs. With that done, she happily declares that their mission is complete. Thanks to her mythical Kitsune Devil Fruit, the Crescent Moon Hunter can now transform into one of the world's most powerful figures. This is a huge play. Saint Saturn does not dignify this with a response. He just asks Devon what business the Blackbeard Pirates have here. And it's not just her. Von Augur is here too, providing his warp teleportation. The Blackbeard Pirates are being very calculated here. Saturn knows who Devon is without being told. He doesn't attack at first, noting that he's surprised a notorious criminal like Devon chose to serve anyone. She could go do her own thing. She doesn't need to follow Blackbeard. Devon chuckles before admitting that Teach is special. Saint Saturn closes his eyes, seemingly understanding. This has something to do with Blackbeard's lineage. Devon's surprised that Saturn knew about that, but the Elder isn't interested in discussing it further and changes the topic. He wants to know what the Blackbeard Pirates are trying to get out of stunts like this. Devon doesn't answer. It's Von Augur who speaks up, not even looking at Saturn to start with. He seems almost disinterested, but he can admit it. Thereafter, the world. Now I don't know about you, but I felt that line. Being in the final saga means more Blackbeard activity, and I am loving it. Augur turns one eye towards Saturn. The Elder Star glares at him. He brings down one spider leg, shattering the ground where Devon and Augur were standing. Just a second too late. They have already teleported away. Saturn is left alone in the ruins of this building with no sign of where his quarry went. He looks around and is already working on his next move. Meanwhile, the two Blackbeard Pirates have managed to teleport towards a wooded area on the Egghead Coast. They're out of immediate danger, but still on the island. Devon's not happy, asking why Augur didn't just warp them further away. He admits that he hasn't fully mastered his warp powers yet. For now, he still has a weak spot. And before they can leave, a strange man starts running towards the Blackbeard Pirates. He recognizes them immediately, calling them out by titles: Supersonic Von Augur and Maiden Hunter Katarina Devon. He sounds like a crazy fanboy who finally got a chance to meet a couple of big shot celebrities. Caribou goes all out, claiming that he has always admired Blackbeard and dreams of being a lackey on Teach's crew. He's pretty much Blackbeard's version of Bartholomew. And now I totally need these two to fight at some point. Caribou overheard that the ancient weapon Pluton is on Wano, and at the time, he planned on sharing the information with a certain someone. This all but confirms that that person is Blackbeard. That is pretty huge. But thankfully, he wasn't actually able to hear Luffy's dream. Either way, Caribou's been trapped on the Sunnies since Wano. He might have a fair bit of knowledge about the Straw Hat crew. And man, this chapter was scorching hot. No break next week, and One Piece will be on the cover of the magazine with a new color spread, so hopefully the streak of bangers will continue. As always, I'm Celestial Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.